The Netflix limited series Painkiller isn't the first about the opioid epidemic, but it does provide a unique presentation. So are you going to be binging? Through a fictionalized retelling of events, Painkiller explores some of the origins and aftermath of the opioid crisis in America, highlighting the stories of the perpetrators, victims, and truth seekers whose lives are forever altered by the invention of OxyContin. So this is based on the book Painkiller by Barry Meyer and the New Yorker magazine article The Family That Built an Empire of Pain by Patrick Radden Keefe. Now I've not read either, but I did see Dopesick, and while this is familiar, Painkiller takes a different approach and it has its own flair. Each of the 6 episodes, they start off with a person clearly reading a cue card that states while everything that is based on true events, many of the names, places, and situations have been changed or fictionalized for dramatic purposes. And then the speaker looks dead into the camera to tell us that what isn't fictionalized is how their loved one died as a result of an OxyContin addiction. Now, these are mainly parents speaking about the children that they've lost, and it is a powerful and attention-getting way to start each episode. Now, the series stars Uzo Aduba, Matthew Broderick, Wes Duchovny, Dina Shahabi, and Taylor Kish. Now, there are others that you're going to recognize, but these are the main players within the story. Uzo Aduba is a standout as she is an investigator who's retelling all of her research and work on the Purdue case as she investigated oxy prescribing excess and then worked to help bring a case against the Sackler family. Now, because Aduba's character of Edie is recounting her investigation, this serves to give us all sorts of details for background that otherwise would just be dry exposition. We watch Edie through flashbacks, and it paints an incredible picture for us. Matthew Broderick plays Richard Sackler, the head of Purdue Pharma that introduced and then pushed OxyContin on America. Broderick is good at being odd and somewhat weird in his characterization. And Sackler isn't a warm or caring character, and we're not meant to ever feel any sympathy for him. Broderick, he makes sure we don't. He embodies callousness and indifference, and it's both captivating and disgusting. Dina Shahabi plays a Purdue sales rep named Britt, and she is a shark when it comes to recruiting sellers and then getting the doctors to first prescribe Oxy and then up the dosages. Shahabi creates a slimy and unscrupulous persona who is appealing to others within this world, but as the audience, we can see how much of a villain she can be. Wes Duchovny is a new recruit under Britt named Shannon, and I loved watching her character arc over the course of the series. We watch someone go from shy and unconfident to a mini Britt, smelling money like it's blood in the water and then going after it with reckless abandon. But then we also watch an internal battle take place as she discovers things about the drug and the company, and that's when Duchovny gets to display a layered and effective performance. I mean, for her character to work, we need to believe that she's redeemable and has reached a point where she can be redeemed. If she doesn't achieve that, then she's just stuck as another villain, and her arc isn't as important or memorable. And finally, there's Taylor Kish, and he plays a character who is prescribed Oxy, and we get to watch the heartbreaking and terrible trajectory that he takes. I mean, he's great in the role. There are times when we need to believe what he believes, and I found myself rooting for him and then feeling the crushing defeat when his addiction would get the better of him and he'd falter in his sobriety. I wish the series would have focused more on other characters who were also suffering addiction because it would have created more of a wide-sweeping illustration of the devastation that the drug was causing. I mean, we get to see brief interactions of others, but really the only in-depth focus we get is with Kish. Now, I mentioned Dopesick earlier, and while these two series share similarities in the story, Painkiller is more shallow and showier than the other series. And it's not to say that the content isn't engaging, but it felt so much like the story was just being rushed. So the narrative, it couldn't stop down and grant more focus and energy on those who were addicted and then all that went into making Oxy such a prescribed drug. And that's kind of what I mean by this thing being shallow. I mean, not much of any of the story goes into depth. We see brief training sessions with the Purdue salespeople, not showing how they were either lied to in training or tasked with deceiving their physician clients. And then we get to see the effects on Kitch's character and some brief mentions and sequences about overdoses. But through each episode, we're mainly thrust quickly through the story, getting more of an overview with some details rather than an in-depth drama. The 6 episodes are all around 40-ish minutes, so this is a quick binge. And while the episodes sort of blended from one to the next, the 5th episode is truly the standout, with story, intensity, and heart. I mean, we're watching 2 parallel stories play out, but on completely different sides of the narrative. And both of them begin to ramp up with tension in combination within this growing musical score. I mean, everything is just rushing towards a terrible climax. And the suspense and the storytelling, it grabbed hold of me, and then it raised my heartbeat. This was an awesome episode, and I wish that the entire series could have captured the same excitement and drama instead of just in a single episode. Now, because of the story content, this most likely isn't going to be a satisfying series in terms of justice. It's mirroring reality, which sucks and is incredibly unfair. But the ire that this creates, I think, is some of the point. Story's there to point out where the public was failed in favor of corporations, money, and greed. So if you've never seen Dopesick, this is probably going to be somewhat enjoyable of a series. Storytelling is quick and fast-paced, and although it is mostly surfacey and it doesn't dive too much into the details or even the inner workings of either Purdue or the physicians, the performances are outstanding, with both discernible victims and villains. If, though, you have seen Dopesick, this is probably going to come across as a pale imitation, not ever achieving the emotional depth or poignancy of that hard-hitting drama. This certainly does have its own emotional beats and portions that are gut-wrenching, but because the depth of storytelling doesn't move beyond the obvious, this isn't a terribly memorable series. There's sex, nudity, a ton of profanity, and some violence. I give Painkiller 2.5 out of 5 couches. So what's a powerful movie or show surrounding addiction that you've seen? Beautiful Boy? That absolutely destroyed me. But let me know what you've seen in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.